Okay, so thank you very much for having me at this event. I was very honored to be invited, especially with a title like Escape, because it means a lot to me about being stuck in some mind thoughts or things like that, and to escape to get further ahead. I've been very fortunate in my career to have spent 30 years at the forefront of ocean exploration. Um, I've gotten to go places that people have never been. I've seen things that have never been seen. I've asked questions that have never been asked before and done things that have never been done before. All in this idea of exploring the deep ocean, which is mostly still unexplored. And the most important thing that I think I've been privileged is to work side by side with some of the best and brightest engineers and scientists on the planet, people that shared my passion for exploration and for discovery. And we've made many discoveries in the earlier days because of new technologies. Every time new technology goes into the water, we find out new things, but also many more questions are asked every time we use new technology. And some of the discoveries were surprising, some were startling, and in a few cases, they were absolutely revolutionary, like the discovery of thriving life in the deep ocean, where we thought we were sure there'd be no life at all. I've also been very humbled to receive many awards and medals and things like that. And I do accept them on behalf of those teams that I've worked with as being the person that gets to stand in front of a microphone. I'm also the one that gets the awards, but really it's a team effort. One would think, though, with all of this, toward the end of my career, that there would be an arc from the beginning of my academic training to now that brought me here. But the truth is far from that. Even though my life was always driven by curiosity, I was born in 1952. I'm 68 now. And so I grew up during the race for space, the Apollo era, and everyone wanted to go to the moon. And I was interested in that as well. At nighttime, I was always out as a child. I'd be out at night with my telescope looking at the heavens, the moons of Jupiter, and I was fascinated by that. Also looking at the rings of Saturn, I was fascinated by that too, because in that little tube with a few lenses, I could look at whole worlds apart from our own worlds and imagine what might be there. During the daytime, I was building model rockets, and we had a small team together of children my age, who maybe 12, 15 years old. We were designing our own and flying our own model rockets. I was president of the Math and Science Club in life, and of the Rocketry Club as well. So you would think that I would have fallen directly into this kind of a role. However, my grades were very, very poor. Most of my grades from the age of about 5 until 17, 18, and actually beyond, were barely passing and sometimes failing. On top of that, that was bad enough. But on top of that, I was always, teachers would comment that I disturbed others. I didn't work to ability. I talked out of turn. And I had a very difficult time taking notes. I did not understand what it was like to take a note. I had a very difficult time understanding what reading was all about. I could read fine, but comprehending was very, very difficult for me. So I had a very, very difficult time. And as a result, when I thought, the teachers knew I wanted to go to college, university, science, and then on to that kind of career, they told me more than once that you don't have the grades to get into those colleges, and you certainly don't have the aptitude to be able to be a scientist. Crushing words. Even though it's only one sentence or two sentences, it would crush the pride from me. So, but I believed them, and to a certain point. I remember, though, when I graduated and instead of going to college, I tried a junior college in my hometown, and I was miserably there too. So I said, okay, they're absolutely right. I don't belong in that field. I'll always say interested because I'm a curious person. I always want to know what's new, but I'll never be able to be part of that. I can just enjoy what other people do. And, looking back on it, there were 3 books that I read and I could read, and I read them 10, 15, 20 times each. The first one was Kon-Tiki. These are the very, which was a story of exploration of a team of people sailing a raft across the Pacific Ocean. Fascinated me about people against the sea. Papillon, and talk about escape, an incredibly tense and interesting book about escape. And then finally, Sherlock Holmes. I love this because it was about solving mysteries and how you solve mysteries. And I read these over and over and over again. And I remembered that in mind that it helped keep my curiosity alive. And basically, I sold shoes for about 7 years, and I was happy doing that. I thought that would be my life. I was manager of the shoe department. And one day, I looked at this magazine and opened it up, and there was an article in here about exploring the deep sea. And there was this one particular image, this one on the right, drawn by hand, and it shows an underwater mountain. And on that mountain range shows a tiny little speck, and that speck is a submarine Elvin, 3 people exploring that mountain range. And that did something to me. That one moment with that one picture threw a switch in my mind and ignited my curiosity again about what was this all about. And I knew right away that's what I want to do. So from there, I went to a local college again, a community college. I took 2 courses and I got A's in both of those courses, very high A's, almost hundreds, mathematics and computer science, which surprised me, surprised a lot of people. Then I went to the University of New York at Albany and entered into a science program. And in 2 years, I made my first dive in that submarine Elvin, in that very submarine. I gave my first paper at an international meeting, and I received my Bachelor of Science degree. And then from there went on and on. I went on to a master's degree and then a PhD. I didn't do that really to get those. There was never a goal to get these degrees, but I was always following my curiosity. And to do that, I needed to have more courses and more exposure to scientists that were doing that kind of work. And I think the important point is that I did not get any smarter or more intelligent by flipping that switch to the magazine. I was driven, and I was confident, and I was focused, and I found an outlet for my curiosity, and nothing was going to move me from that. From there, I went on to get my PhD. I got at the University of Rhode Island, and people would joke with me all the time about my beginnings and how I got to that point. And there, it was fascinating. Every single day at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, when a team came back from exploring the ocean, there would be something brand new that they wanted to share. And so the spirit of exploration was still alive. And that's where I really got sold or convinced that the idea of teamwork is so important. And to me, there are certain lessons that I learned from my childhood all the way through that learned to help me, who was not very confident because of what I was told, become more confident about what I did. And one was to learn to listen, which is very difficult. I have to remember that every day and learn that every day. The other, of course, is to ask for help, not to spend time cowering in a corner or worrying, but to ask someone for help that you trust. And often things that you seem insurmountable can be solved very quickly. Focus. I think most of the people that I know that have been very successful, and by that I mean everyone from Jeff Bezos, who I knew when he was young, and Sergey Brin and Larry Page, will tell you that they focused on what the goal was ahead. And, I had to work harder. I don't want to make it sound like it was easy. I saw the sun rise and fall many, many times as a student. And that was another thing I've heard, a common thing amongst people, is that you have to work harder. Question dogma. When I got either with ocean exploration, or even with my education, coming up across things that were considered to be dogma. This is the way we always do it, or these are the things you can't do. More often than not, I found out that those were roadblocks, and so I learned to question it. You have to be respectful, of course, which brings up the next thing. When I was a tennis player, I was very passionate about playing tennis too, and I would play 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and I was pretty good. I would, in tournaments, get to the third, fourth round of tournaments, and I did that on my own. But when I got up against someone that was trained, that had coaching, it would be a disaster. I would be wiped off the court in no time at all. And so what I learned from that, same thing in academics and in research, is that solid base of understanding is so important. Passion will only take you so far. It's very important to have, but you really need to know the fundamentals and have the fundamentals down in your quiver so you can reach back and draw on them. So if everything falls apart, you'll still have that foundation. So the foundations, people got used to me being running around exploring and doing all sorts of things, but I never ever let go of those foundations, knowing that if something collapsed, I'd have those to fall back on. Maybe the last important thing was recognizing opportunities, and which I find still difficult, and I know my colleagues do too. Always we find that difficult, is to be able to look at a situation or something someone proposes and recognize it as an opportunity, and then decide, is it an opportunity, and is it one that you should pursue or not pursue? It's so important to be sure of the things you do and be comfortable with them, but equally as important about the things you don't decide not to do. And again, that's something I found very, very important. Finding Air France 447, there was a plane that was going from Rio to France. It was a plane that disappeared in the middle of the ocean, and people thought it would never be found. But we used a formula that I like all the time, is that with the right team, the talent, with the right technology, with the right techniques or operational skill, you have the best chance of pulling off something like that. I think that's true in many, many things. I like to think of a symphony orchestra where you want to have the best musicians, and you want them to have the best instruments, and you want them to have the best conductor. But by best, it doesn't mean the newest. It means the musicians that are comfortable with that particular instrument, comfortable with each other, comfortable with the music that's being played. Because at the end, you don't want noise. You don't want cacophony. You want people to be focused, to know what the mission is and where we're going. And that was what we used really to find Air France 447. The team was absolutely spectacular. My job, I retired 3 years and I'm busier than ever. I find still every single day I come up against the same issues that I've come up with my entire career. Do you want to be involved in this project? And then sometimes I'll say yes, sometimes I say no. But the moment I say yes, people say, well, why did you pick him to be involved? What are your credentials to be involved? So politics plays a very large role in it. And, we have a serious problem with the oceans now in particular. I know we spend a lot of time on climate, but what we learned from the oceans is that the oceans, every other breath of fresh air we take, the oxygen comes from the ocean. Food for 2 billion people on the planet, that's almost 30%. 30% come from the oceans. And the air we breathe comes from water we drink comes from the ocean. So the food we eat, the air we breathe, the water we drink come from the oceans, and yet we don't understand them. We've only explored really about 8, 9, 10%. So right now we're trying to find out the best way to put the stories together to attract people, to have a call to action so that people understand that the answers that we need to understand better about this planet are out there. But to do that right, we have all these things I talked about. You have to have a mission. You have to have the right people. You have to have the right technology and techniques, and then you have the best chance. The last thing I want to leave you with, Dr. Sanaway beginning talked about the journey, a journey, and not always about the importance of legs. There's a quote that I like by Marcel Proust. Oh, my computer is telling me to stop speaking. I can go over there. By Marcel Proust, and he said, "The true voyage of exploration and discovery is not always in seeking new landscapes. Sometimes it's having new eyes," which to me means that with new technology, we're beginning to see things differently, and we have to start thinking about the planet and about each other in a totally different way. Thank you very much.